I'm Jim Collison, and live from the Gallup offices here in the Shard in London. This is Gallup's Called to Coach, recorded on December 4th, 2019. Nicely done. Called to Coach is a resource for those who want to help others discover and use their strengths. We have Gallup experts and independent strengths coaches share tactics, insights, and strategies to help coaches maximize the talent of individuals, teams, and organizations around the world. If you're listening live, we'd love to have you join us in the chat room. And even though we're live from the Shard, we do have a chat room available for you if you'd love to log into that. It's actually right above the video window up there. There's a link to it. Join us on YouTube. Sign in there as well. If you're listening after the fact, you can send us your questions, coaching@gallup.com. Anna Sawyer is our host today. Anna is our market leader for strengths development at EMEA. How do you pronounce that? EMEA. That's new to me for some reason. And we are out of the London office today. Anna, it is great to have you on this Call to Coach.
It's amazing to have you here.
Yeah, so we spent some time thinking about this. Maybe I think even a couple years ago, thinking about what if we incorporated a live Call to Coach in this event? Today has been fantastic. Anything you want to share from just kind of today's session that we had here?
Wow. I mean, just volume of learning, enthusiasm, inspiration. Crazy day.
Yeah.
Brady's on slight overload, honestly.
Have you guys had a good time here today? Yeah. We have three guests that we want to bring up tonight, three coaches that we want to spend some time with. And as they're coming up, one of the things I'm hoping is that the London evening will come quickly. We are really looking forward to having the lights come on for the camera as they do that. So I'm hoping here by the time we are done, we are seeing the bright lights. And I think these coaches are a bright light to the work that they're doing here and around the world. So we're excited. Anna, why don't you take a second and introduce our first guest?
Yeah, so I'm going to invite Richard Harris to come up and join us, please. Welcome.
Thank you.
You're in the hot seat or hot stand.
You're in the hot stand. You can pull the chair if you want to, but you're welcome to just speak loudly into the mic there and introduce him as well.
Yeah, so Richard is part of our alumni community here in London, well, EMEA, and you run your own business. It's called EQ Coaching Consulting.
That's right.
And I think you've been coaching a little while now, so glad to have you with us.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Fantastic. First of all, I have to follow the inimitable Micah, trying to do a good job of filling her very talented boots. Tell us your top five.
Yes, so I leave the strategic at number one, communication at 2, connectedness at 3, activator, and then individualization.
Fantastic. How do they kind of serve you in the work that you do?
Well, I think discovering coaching, I found my thing. I mean, my strengths really play to working with leaders and enjoy complexity with my strategic at number one. So the bigger the problem that my clients have, the better for me. My individualization means that I can get right into the unique and special qualities of my clients. My connectedness gets to see how they function in their team, their organization as a whole, gives me that micro and macro lens. And my activator means that I can bring that energy and enthusiasm that comes infectious in my work. And my communicator means that I don't get lost for words in situations like this.
Fantastic. Good for us. Tell us a little bit about the clients that you work with. I know you have a pretty unique client portfolio.
So prior to doing the ASC and becoming a strengths coach through Gallup, I was providing consultancy work into schools, and I was doing a lot of work around how we raise emotional literacy and intelligence in schools. So lots of work around policies and procedures with pastoral care, with students, and also staff wellbeing. And I found that there were some schools that I was working with where they were firing all cylinders and the culture was great and leaders were doing their thing and they were doing it well. And then other schools, they were really struggling in those spaces. And so it led me to, if I'm going to work with schools to help improve the lives of students and to get them performing and thriving, I needed the culture to be right in the school, and I needed to work with the leadership to be able to affect that change, which is what brought me here. And so I've been using my strengths coaching to work with education leaders, teachers, students, and whole families as well. And now I found myself working in the corporate sector as well, and cross-pollinating with my stories from the corporate world, with the education world, and that feels quite impactful on both sides.
Fantastic. Tell us a little bit more about the work that you do with children and young people.
Yeah. So I think I often get a call from a frustrated teacher or a parent pulling their hair out. I've got a teenager that I don't know what to do with.
We're not going to talk about me now, though, are we? No. Okay, good.
And my coaching conversations with children and young people is really about giving them a space to discover who they are, and focusing on their strengths, which might, for many of the young people that I work with, it's a question that is fundamental in adolescence. Who am I? And who do I want to be? And there's going to be huge parts of that equation that are going to be unresolved for a fair while yet. So I think that my coaching conversations with those guys is helping them along that road, taking those first few steps in asking that, and also helping them to distinguish what seems obvious to them about who they are and what they're good at is genuinely unique to them, and opening their eyes to that's not how everyone else is. And I think that seems to land well in helping these guys adjust in whatever it is they're struggling with, to then be able to make those steps to whether it's increasing their performance at school and landing those grades that they want, or how they're sort of functioning at home, or being able to rebel but doing it well.
Very good. So interesting that you work with, children and young people and families. When you think about that, how do you think businesses could maybe benefit from kind of some of the similarities or understanding some of the dissimilarities? I don't know, in those different groups.
Yeah, well, so families are teams.
Okay.
And fundamentally, there's not really a huge difference in what I'm doing if I'm in a big corporate environment working with teams, and who are you and how do you function and where's your best place and what role do you provide. It's fundamentally the same question. I think some of the presentation and execution is subtly different, but I think the principles are the same. I think where the cross-pollination that gets interesting is, so for my corporate clients, if I use an anecdote from schools, from families, well, that's entirely relatable. We all went to school, we've all got families. And I think also there's real opportunity for businesses to see this isn't confined to a corporate environment. CliftonStrengths is a tool that's most commonly found in a corporate environment, but there's loads of us that are applying it in different places in different ways. And I think for business community, there's a lot of good questions out there about how we do flexible working, how we make our working lives for our staff more suitable to getting work-life balance right. So there's an opportunity for businesses to perhaps bring in their strengths coaching to staff with the question, well, how do you use it outside of work? How could you use this? You understand what your profile is now at work. Well, what does that mean for your wife or husband, your children?
Right. Interesting. And I know you do a lot of work with schools and kind of in broader education settings. Do you see any kind of themes or patterns that are coming out in those environments?
How do you mean?
Are there certain kind of patterns of talent things that you're observing, or?
Yeah. I think with teachers, I think we often see a lot of relationship building themes.
Okay.
I think I think a lot of teachers get into it, not for money or fame, but because it's something they believe in and they care about, and that is 9 times out of 10 students.
Right.
So it's not a huge surprise when you start seeing lots of developer hire.
Okay.
There's certainly a lot of teachers out there with themes like restorative. I see that one frequently.
Okay.
And learner as well is a passion for learning. And I think that's a really great theme to see in the classroom.
Richard, have you seen it go home? So you're in the schools, you have teachers, you got the students. Does it make its way home where parents start asking questions, or are you getting any feedback from home?
Yeah, I mean, I think where I've coached whole families, that's almost always come from, I've been working with a child in their school, and then the families start asking the question, well, how can I make this work at home as well? This looks good.
Yeah, kind of bleeds that way. How many are in the education space or working in the education space now? Just raise your hand in here. Okay, a few. Okay, awesome. Maybe one more question.
Well, as we're coming towards the end of 2019, what does 2020 look like for you?
Gosh, well, futuristic's pretty low down.
Okay.
So in the here and now. So I think there are some really interesting clients that are going to start working with me next year. I'm really looking forward to doing some work in the creative arts industry, which is a world that I've not particularly explored before. So that's exciting and new. I think there's some really interesting projects and some writing exercises that I want to get underway, and really just looking to expand my business and build on more of the same, really.
Fantastic.
Now, before we let Richard go, one really important question. I asked a few of you we've been recording these Ignite sessions. Fish and chips. What do you dip the chips in?
Mushy peas.
Mushy peas. All right. Yeah. Okay. That's one. That's one. Let's give Richard a hand for his time up here, will you? Thank you. Thank you. All right. Guest number 2, Anna, who's coming up to join us
We've
next?
got Navneet Dhanjal. Hi.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good.
I know you like to be called Nav, so
Yes,
welcome.
thank you.
And I'm going to go with a pattern here. Top 5. Let's start with that.
Probably can guess from my little walk up, but I've got positivity is my number 1.
Uh-huh.
I've got woo, and I've actually got the opposite of that next to it, which is relator. So as much as I love to get to know everyone, I also like to, how do I get to know you at a deeper level as well?
Right.
I've got communication and individualization.
Fantastic. And thinking about your journey with strengths, I know you originally started with your own business and as an independent coach. Tell us a little bit about what your journey has been, because that was...
Yeah, it's sort of interesting. So my journey began being in sales leadership. And with sales leadership, you've got to develop high-performing teams.
Right.
So this is you're talking about early 2000, when no one even knew what coaching was. And then I began my journey coaching. I didn't know I was doing it until I started to find out more. And then the more I explored it, the more I loved it. And the more that I created that kind of a role within the business I was in. I was working over at Carphone Warehouse. This is, it was such a different time.
Yeah.
Look, my role was all about how you coach managers within the business after a while. And then I just went out on my own. I was like, I can do this. And it was good. I've had a brilliant career running my own business, and I've worked with Apple, worked with Atos, worked with some really big companies. And then that sort of led me through that journey of being headhunted in between. And I suppose in my head, I still feel like a freelancer, even though I'm currently working with an organization.
Yeah.
Because it's always a challenge of that business that draws me to it.
Fantastic. And so you're now with BT.
I am.
Fantastic. How's that going?
It's brilliant. Yeah, it's been 2.5 years,
Okay.
which feels like it's gone in seconds. I thought I would trial it and see how it goes for a few months. It's 2.5 years later and I'm really enjoying it still. So it tells you something.
So good news.
Yeah, really good.
And you work with a really diverse group within BT, don't you? Or groups, I should say.
Yeah, the role itself was brand new. They'd never done this before.
Mm-hmm.
So my role within it is leadership coaching and specifically sales leadership coaching. Mm-hmm. So it's never been done. We're the only group, there's 4 of us for the whole country. And it was a little bit where we knew that there were loads. The sort of the setup is that we've got BT Enterprise, the internal sales group, but also we've got partners, which are their own limited companies that sell to local businesses.
Right.
And it's a really unique proposition. So the role really is, how do you get those local businesses and the owners of those businesses to be excellent leaders and develop their own high-performing business?
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And how big are those organisations usually?
The biggest one of those local businesses that work for BT, they're probably the biggest one's around 150. The smallest one, you're looking at about 15.
Okay.
So yeah, it varies.
Really different.
There's about 40 of them across the whole of the UK.
Fantastic. So when you think about that work that you've been doing, what do you think is working best?
It's what's working best is listening.
Yeah.
Because the old BT way was very tell and command, which we've all learned today doesn't work. And my role was really to help them start to think about developing. So it was first things first, it was to listen and to understand what's really going on in their business first, before I go in with a big bunch of stuff that might make them a bit scared.
Right.
Can I ask how that listening phase can vary in time? When do you know it's time to, I not say stop listening, but to start acting?
So my positivity is all about, there's only a certain amount of stuff that I can hear.
Yeah, well, in a woo, you're also woo, which is not great at waiting, right?
Yeah, but my relator really wants to listen. So it's sort of all battling with each other. But the positivity bit is when I've heard the same thing on repeat, I know that it's time now to move forward. So it's kind of like, okay, let me listen. And now I instinctively know this moment of when it's ready to take that to a future state. Yeah,
actually, I love that measurement moment you said when things start to repeat.
Yes.
And that may be, I don't know, that may be a universal clue to some of, even in our coaching sessions, when we begin to hear people repeat items, that may be the time, because we spend a lot of time listening, right? But there are times then to start moving.
Yeah.
And so maybe even in the enterprise or working in the schools or whatever, right? Listen for that repeat in there.
Yeah,
Good.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think there's a mixture of maybe group sessions and individual sessions. Can you just share a little bit more about what that looks like?
Yeah, the role is it's quite an interesting one because it's whatever the right fit is for that moment.
Okay.
So I've developed big programs around leadership management, helping them to understand a bit more about themselves. But then also real one-to-one development with the owners and the sales directors on understanding themselves. It's always a massive mix, and sometimes it might even be company stuff. So that's where some of the strength stuff really comes in like brilliantly within that business.
Fantastic.
Yeah, really.
And with the enterprise business as well, you're kind of plugging strengths in?
Yeah, so with the internal team, is they're in an influencing role. Everything they do is they've got to think strategically, they've also got to influence because they don't own these businesses. So to build their own personal leadership style and understand how their strengths can help those local businesses is immense. And within those businesses, there's a lot of conflict. These are, I don't know if anyone else works for a small business, but it's tough. It's a tough world. They're just looking at how they can stay afloat pretty much, or how do they bring the next money in. And that can go straight, the command thing comes straight into play. And there can be blame, there can be conflict, there can be not understanding why people aren't selling. So strengths is coming brilliantly so they can understand each other a little bit more. They've had a lot more patience. We had like a really amazing example of one manager that uncovered had really high, his number one was competition. So he was just annoying the hell out of everyone. I know, because he was overusing it. So it was just that he was upsetting everyone by having them like be number one. But as soon as they understood him, they understood his passion, and then he understood them, and you could tailor his style. And it's completely to the point where everyone was going to leave to now everyone wants to be around him. That's like massive difference.
Fantastic.
We do have a global audience, and Ralph in the chat room, if you're a Call the Coach fan, you know Ralph spends a lot of time in the chat room. Asks us,
Hi, Ralph.
he asks us, BT stands for?
British Telecom.
Okay, good.
It was so the lovely Florence at the back earlier on. We were chatting, and she goes, "Who do you work for?" BT. She went, "Do they still exist?" And I was like, yes.
Still with
British
us.
Telecom. Yeah, there are 130,000 people globally,
Wow.
which is like pretty incredible. But yeah, and I think that the big thing around was we're going through massive change in the business. It's a massive brand change, and people don't know what BT do. They just think they're a telephone company.
Yeah.
And it was so much bigger. And we're helping people to use their strengths to communicate that and feel inspired by it, really.
Have you found any secrets on, you got people spread out all over the planet, right? I'm assuming, in getting information to them and learning and training and all these things around that. Have you guys kind of cracked the code on that, or how are you guys doing that?
But the global way.
Yeah, the global.
Yeah, it's I suppose that's where my individualization comes in, because it's kind of like where every single part of the cultures around the globe have something really incredible about them, and it's bringing them up. So it's actually saying that this is some of the cultural amazing trends that we're seeing. This is what's creating big differences, and some may work for you and some may not work depending on your culture. So it's kind of it's not one glove fits all. So I think we're just bringing them up, we're seeing them. And we're congratulating it, really.
It's a challenge, right? And I think we were talking about McDonald's last night and how they've done such a good job of dropping into communities and really absorbing themselves into the community. It would be really easy for them to say, no, one size fits all. We're a McDonald's, right? And we're going to do this thing. And yet I've visited a McDonald's in Japan, very different than a McDonald's in Germany, which is very different than the McDonald's. And even the UK version is different than the American version. And so I think there's some opportunities. I'd love to hear you say that, especially in our coaching, because we don't want CliftonStrengths to necessarily be a one size fits all based on culture, right? There's cultural nuances and language and in all those pieces that we have to do. And so good to see thinking about how do we take the best of it and culture and really make it work.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I know you have some pretty famous clients. Can you share any of your clients with us?
Can share one.
Come on.
We have the Queen.
It's quite exciting.
The Queen of England. But yeah, we look after BT pretty much services, like all of the stuff around the palaces and their grounds and everything.
Amazing.
But also one I think people don't know about is emergency services. Yeah. So that is something which is fully supported by BT. And it's an interesting fact, like if all the systems, if BT went down, 3/4 of the planet wouldn't be able to have connectivity. Or communication, and that's when you realise the impact of the work that you're doing.
Absolutely, yeah. Did you coach the Queen?
Oh, I'd love to coach the Queen.
She might need some coaching right now, I think.
Coach me.
Oh, maybe too soon. Maybe too soon.
Parenting coaching.
Yeah.
Maybe time for one more question.
2020. What do you hope it brings?
2020, I hope it brings a new wave of positive change.
Nice.
And I know with BT where it's all about going beyond your limits, and that's really inspiring. So for me, I'm hoping that the work I'm doing around strengths inspires other people to go beyond their limits.
Fantastic, thank you.
Okay, my final question though, fish and chips, what do you dip the chips in?
So this is where I'm going to go to my Indian heritage.
Okay.
You've got to have tomato ketchup with some chili sauce.
Ooh, chili sauce, nice. Let's thank you for coming up here.
Thank you so much.
Anna, why don't you introduce our third and final guest?
Our third and final guest is Sophie Lawler.
Hi.
Hello, good evening.
If that's all right.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be able to tell if I was sitting on.
Well, welcome.
Thank you. I am full of cortisol. My chimp is over here telling me to swear. So
It's a global audience.
Straight
Just
away.
be careful with it. We'll bleep it out later, maybe.
That's why I pulled it out straight away.
Well, there you go. All right, good. Good.
Okay, you're all safe. You're all
I'm
safe.
safe.
Let's start safe. Top 5.
Competition and achiever.
Uh-oh.
Learner, activator, strategic.
Fantastic, fantastic. Now, Sophie, I had the first opportunity to start a conversation with you a few months ago, and I know that you've just taken on this really big role, so that you're the new CEO at an organisation that's going through massive change. So I would love for you to just share a little bit about the organisation that you're leading now.
Yeah, sure. So, I've got the big job of Chief Enthusiasm Officer
Exactly.
as of this morning. I've been in role 18 months, which I guess is still new.
Yeah.
I guess is still new, doesn't feel particularly new. And I work in the fitness industry, so I'm ready for the fish and chips question. I might dodge it. I work I work in the fitness industry, and I run a chain of health clubs called Total Fitness, which operates in the northeast and northwest of England. They're huge health clubs. The business has taken a few punches.
Okay.
It's been on the ropes a few times, and we're coming back, and we've seen the most immense growth over this year. Organic growth, proper growth in a mature business. So we're in a good place right now. We're feeling pretty good.
Yeah, so when you say they are big formats, do you want to just give us a bit of a picture of that? Because I think they're quite different from most of the gyms that people would recognise.
Yeah, we don't build them like we used to. We won't build them that way again. They're so our biggest club is 110,000 square feet. And I don't know sort of everybody's knowledge of health clubs and sort of general sizes, but I used to work for a business called Fitness First, who had 500 clubs around the world, and sort of our average size was around about 10,000 square feet. The ones in London are around about half that.
Yeah.
So these are big, and our smallest big club is 60,000 square feet.
Wow.
So these are monstrous. They've got running tracks, 3 swimming pools as standard. Ooh, they're pretty monstrous.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about your typical customer at a Total Fitness gym.
Well, this is one of the brilliant things about Total Fitness, but equally strategically one of the most challenging, because the
proposition is so huge that strategically you can't go niche. We need sort of 5,000-6,000 members per small club to make the business wash its own face. And when you look at the demography of our business, 30-40% of them are over 55, 25% of them are millennials. So there's a really, really big split.
So it's a tough answer.
Absolutely.
One that I've dodged well. It's an honest answer. Our customers are really, really, really diverse.
Right. And they tend to be out of town locations, so real sort of destination, I'm coming today.
Yeah, you need a really good excuse for people to drive to our clubs, because they are destinations, whereas in sort of the bits of the industry that are thriving, they're around about convenience.
Right.
I'm a big believer in fitness experience, so it's one of the reasons why this business is a perfect fit for me. But yeah, you've got to drive to these beasts, so we need to create experience in them, which is one of the things that the business has been lacking.
Now, I've heard you describe yourself as a kind of fitness lifer. So I know that you've, obviously had a lot of experience in this industry. You have learned in your top 5. What have you learned in your journey with Total Fitness over the last few months?
I think it's fair to say I've learned more in the last 18 months than the rest of my near 20 years in the industry, to be honest. There's a lot of sort of technical knowledge you can have in the industry, and strategic knowledge, and all the good stuff that just comes with a lifetime's experience in the sector. But I have had to learn and grow so hard. It's my first CEO rodeo in a really difficult business. So it was a gamble for the shareholders, the private equity company that appointed me. I was a full-on gamble for them. I was a good bet. I was on a full-on gamble. But one of the things that I have really enjoyed about my 18 months is that I've had to learn. I've had to overstretch. And I've had to really think hard about when I make mistakes and what can I learn and how do we all move forward. But that's brilliant, because as a people-based organisation, if I'm learning, then my entire organisation is learning, because I'm ideating and I'm bringing things to the table, and I'm very honest about my journey as well. So everybody wants to be on it, which is awesome.
Fantastic. Now, one of the things I was trying to catch your eye this morning as Jim was sharing the path with us, because the very first conversation that we had, you said this is all people-powered transformation. So as Jim was sharing the path, I was thinking there must be lots of we got this right going on in your head. Tell me more about that. Why people-powered transformation?
Well, I mean, just to qualify that, I mean, now we're sort of nearly a whole financial year in, like a full calendar year. 2019 was our first calendar year together as a team. We've had exceptionally limited investment. The size of the clubs is massive, so they take quite a lot of capital investment if you're going to drive growth.
Right.
We've had barely any capital investment. We've grown our membership base by 10%, by 10,000 members. So that's like 500 a club, and that's without capital investment. I haven't seen that done before in the sector, so it's something we're super proud of. But where we have invested is in the people,
Right.
And that's literally been the approach. We haven't really had, there's a couple of members of my team over there, we haven't had much else, have we? We haven't had much oxygen. So it literally has been all people powered. And the reason it had to be people powered is, when I arrived, you can feel when the business is disengaged, you can sort of feel it, and so your customers feel it too. And it was clear to me from the start that there was something wrong. There was people in there opening the doors, closing the doors, doing their jobs, but they didn't really seem to know why. And when you don't know why you're doing something, you're not going to do it with any level of ownership.
Right.
And so when I looked under the bonnet at the performance of the business, it was no surprise to me that the trajectory was pretty rough. So I knew it was going to be people power. It was just how to do it. And in one of the sessions this morning, I think the phrase embedded potential, which is the phrase that I used to describe Total Fitness, was almost used by Jan or Jim. There was just massive embedded potential in the business through the people. We just had to unlock it.
Fantastic. So you talked about this is a private equity backed organisation. Tell me a little bit about, how did you convince them that culture was the critical driver for turning the business around?
Yeah, it's a tough sell, isn't it? And it's something that Jim touched on this morning. How do you mathematise, that's not a word, quantify?
He's American, he's allowed to make up words.
Hey,
I just made
now.
one up.
Wait a minute.
I'll be an honorary American
I'm standing here
today.
not understanding a word you're saying, so.
Do you know what? That's fine. Two of my team are over there. They haven't understood me for a year either. Yeah, how do you quantify that case? And there's a particular nuance there with private equity, right? They're not particularly long-termist. It's the next 3, not the next 30.
Right.
But it's exceptionally important to sort of manage them as a stakeholder, and being able to feel, and doing a lot of questioning and a lot of listening, massive engagement problem. And I asked somebody else in the audience, actually a chap called Neil of Coachopolis, to help me kind of quantify. So what we did was we thought, well, okay, there's definitely a service profile problem. The churn in the business feels too high, and there's definitely engagement problem. So how do I do the maths? So we took the number of our full-time employees, which was 500, about 650 actual people, but 500 full-time. And we looked at the service profile and sort of thought, well, if somebody's only been in role for less than 3 months, they're 25% effective. 3 to 6 months, 50% effective, and kept going. And we did the maths on our service profile, and that took my number of effective employees down to just over 300.
Wow.
And then we took off another 13% for engagement, because my employee net promoter score, when we temperature checked, it was minus 13. Took that off. Business has no purpose.
Right.
We know that has a massive impact, but we softened it a little bit and said, well, let's take off 10%, which in my view wasn't enough. And hey, presto, I've only got 290 effective employees. So I could sit there with my shareholders and say, well, at the moment, this plane is flying with one engine. So get out of my way.
Right.
Give me the runway I need, because I'm gonna do some stuff with the people. And I don't want to look at the numbers for now. So I had a good 3-4 months of not looking at the numbers in a board meeting with your shareholders, which is fascinating. It was a total gift.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of support that I had.
Fantastic.
Brilliant.
Fantastic. And I know that you can already sort of, when you're walking around and talking to people, you can just feel a difference, can't you, in kind of how people are responding to this kind of new focus. As you think about building on that in 2020, what does that look like?
Well, working with strengths, which I'm hoping will be our growth philosophy, if you like, will be the fourth sort of pillar of our people strategy. We've laid the foundations really well with purpose, values, leadership philosophy, and our growth on top. Yeah. So that's our people strategy, if you like. And then we've got a load of product strategy stuff coming down the line as well. But what I hope it looks like for Total Fitness is more organic growth, by getting new customers or selling more to the existing ones. Right. It's not done in the mature fitness industry at all in the UK, so I'm hoping to continue proving that. And for me, I'm going to keep learning, because then we all learn.
Total
Fantastic.
fitness anyway.
Fantastic. Jim, any questions for Sophie?
I think this is the time. Fish and chips on your chips. What do you got?
I'm sorry, I haven't had fish and chips for years.
Oh,
Last time I did, I was in Scotland, and they do a thing called salt and sauce with their fish and chips, but I don't know what it is.
chippy sauce? It's called chippy sauce, I think is what it
It's
is.
just brown and it tastes great.
Is
but
that
it's usually
all right?
really
Chippy
annoying.
sauce. All right. Let's give Sophie a hand for coming
Thank you
out.
so much. Thank you.
And a nice job on selecting the guests, as we think we kind of worked through several different phases there in people's. Hopefully you've got some benefit out of that. You've got some questions. We'll be hanging around for the cocktail party tonight. And maybe you could, if you had questions for them, you want to ask them some more. I'm sure they would love to answer your questions. Anna, you said you had some questions for me, which is kind of scary.
Well,
So we have just a minute or two or three, maybe. What do you have for me?
so I think it's fair to say you've probably spoken to some of our most passionate strengths coach around the world. And we're kind of curious about, I think, what you think. You talked to lots of people. What do you think?
Yeah, so the global movement, I've gotten a good seat on the global movement over the last 7 years. And it's kind of crazy to think we've been creating these Called to Coach programs now for 7 years. And a great opportunity to have a window into seeing what's happening in those countries through the voices of the coaches. And so while I don't necessarily get to see exactly what they're doing or where they're doing it, the city they're doing it in, big privilege, by the way, to be here in London for me, to see the city that many of you are working in or have come to at least to do that. But for me, it's given me this great opportunity to kind of watch the movement grow. So what's going on in India? And so, we probably have 50 Called to Coach programs that we've done out of India, and we spanned them across the last 5 years. We've watched Australia catch fire over the last 3 years. And if you've listened to any of the Called to Coaches with Anne and Claire, if you haven't, you should be, by the way. It's a clinic. Those coaches in Australia do an amazing job of kind of just saying what they're doing. We spend 45 minutes with them. By the way, if you're not listening to those, get it on your phone. Get your phone out right now. Subscribe to Call the Coach and do that. But I've gotten to see this incredible growth opportunity and watch these regions catch fire. We just started in language, and we created last year. We created called Theme Thursday in Spanish. So Chloe and Blanca. Was that two years ago? Is that 2 now that we started that, the Theme Thursday in Spanish, or was that last year? So we have a whole season of Theme Thursday in Spanish, and we just created in language Japanese, and we're 3 in, and we got the 4th one ready to come out. That's kind of cool. Like, that's really neat to see that take off. That's really powerful to see that take off in other languages and see other people kind of catch this vision. So if you'd asked me, out of 7 years of doing this, that's been it. I've also had some great co-hosts, and thank you. This, I think, our first time doing this ever. But I think of Micah and Mike and Dean and all those folks, Jeremy, who've been on the program to help do that. It's been pretty awesome.
Most memorable or moving interview?
So we had one out of India with a gal, and I forget her name now, but she actually coached women who were getting out of the sex trafficking space. And you just kind of, wow. And all of a sudden I thought, oh man, maybe I need to get a different job. Mine doesn't feel that important when we're interviewing these people around sex trafficking. And but there have been many. I mean, I think there's so many more when we do that from some of the faith-based organizations that we've interviewed, to the schools who are trying things differently, right? To the business organizations, to the startups who are they're just going a million miles an hour, hair on fire, trying to figure some things out, right? Life is just a million miles an hour for them. So there's been some great moments on that as well. Yeah.
And I'm going to ask, just because for my own personal entertainment, what was the craziest idea that you shot down?
Oh, I don't shut down too many crazy ideas. Just to be honest, we give them a try, and most of them work most of the time. No, If it was, it would probably be a Phil Ruhlman production of some kind, something he asked. But no, I don't think I've ever had to, or stop any or not publish something that we've done. Everybody, when we first started this, Dean Jones, who, if you're not watching Dean Jones, is called the coach, you should be. Dean sat in my office for about 4 hours just to make sure if people started cursing and swearing in the chat room, I had a way of kicking them out. And he was so concerned that, hey, what happens if, we start getting trolls in the chat room? In the years we've done this, only one time have I actually had to do that. And so that's, I think, a pretty good testimony of the power of strengths in the community and what we're doing here, that we just have not had those problems of having. Now, that doesn't mean I haven't had to quiet some of you on Facebook from time to time. So my Facebook friends that are out there that communicate that way. But it has been, I have had very little problems in doing this.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's been great.
So I have to turn the question back to you.
Okay.
What do you put on your fish and chips?
I use good old American ketchup. It's got to be warm though. You can't do cold ketchup. I didn't realize that was going to be such a controversial. Ketchup doesn't spoil, right? You can leave it out, and all right.
Not a popular one.
I guess not. Any final thoughts, Anna?
Well, no, but thank you for coming to join us here. It's been a pleasure.
It has been fun. Thank all of you for coming out today to be a part of this. Chloe's going to wrap us here just in a second, but with that, I'll remind everyone to take full advantages of all the resources we have now available on Gallup Access. So if you haven't visited that yet, Gallup, go to gallup.com/CliftonStrengths. By the way, we have tons of resources for you. If this is maybe you came today, maybe you're not a coach or you're thinking about coaching, or some of this is new to you, we have tons of resources available for you on our Clifton Strengths pages. And some of my best friends at work have been working hard to make that super awesome place to be. So go to gallup.com/CliftonStrengths. Look at the menu. There's two menus. There's a Gallup menu below it. There's an About page. Many of you asked us for a long time, what's the history of Clifton Strengths? Guess what? It's there. It's there now, right? We have a complete history of everything around Clifton Strengths. So if you want to know that, what about a one-pager I can use to kind of convince people to do that? Guess what? It's there. It's there now, right? So we have those resources that are available for you as well. Don't forget, you can catch the audio and video and downloadable audio of this program, plus all the other ones that we've done. They're available, going to be available on YouTube as well. So if you go to youtube.com, search Clifton Strengths, and you'll get all our recorded content. So hundreds of hours of professional development for you. If you need some of that for our certified coaches, we have a learning series coming up in January that counts. Many of that can count as professional development credits, ICF, some of those things that are available as well. If you want to join us in the Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/called-to-coach. About 14,000 out there, and a very active group, and lots of great conversations that are out there as well. And so we appreciate you and you guys coming today. We'll thank those who joined us live through the live stream. There are quite a few out there today that did that on camera. I want to thank you for joining us. We'll be back actually with a community update on Friday that I get to do live from here, which will be super cool. And Austin will be in Birmingham, and we will update the community on all the things that are going on. And with that, we'll say goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.